The rain battered Seattle's streets, a relentless drumbeat that mirrored the chaos in Eli's heart. He sat in the corner of Brood Awakening, the city's coziest cafe, clutching a mug of chamomile tea that had long gone cold. At 23, Eli was pregnant, and the father could be one of 3 alphas, each tied to him by threads of passion, pain, and secrets he wasn't ready to unravel. Eli's hazel eyes darted to the cafe door every time it swung open, half expecting one of them to walk in, Caleb, the brooding artist with a heart as wild as his paintings. Marcus, the steady firefighter who'd saved Eli's life in more ways than one. Or Julian, the charismatic lawyer whose charm masked a turbulent past. Each alpha had claimed a piece of Eli's soul during their whirlwind romances. And now, for weeks into a pregnancy he hadn't planned, Eli was drowning in questions. Who was the father? And how could he face the truth when it might shatter everything? The cafe's fairy lights cast a warm glow over the wooden tables, but Eli felt anything but warm. He'd always known he was an Omega, destined to navigate a world where alphas held power and Omegas bore the weight of expectation. Growing up in a small town outside Seattle, he'd fought stereotypes. Omegas were supposed to be docile, submissive, eager to bond. Eli was anything but. He'd moved to the city to chase his dream of becoming a music therapist, to prove he could carve his own path. But love, messy and unscripted, had derailed him. Caleb had been the first. They'd met at an art gallery downtown, where Eli had been drawn to a chaotic painting of a stormy sea. Caleb, all sharp cheekbones and inky hair, had caught Eli staring and teased. "You look like you're drowning in it." Their connection was instant. Electric. Nights spent in Caleb's loft, tangled in sheets and dreams, felt like freedom. But Caleb's intensity came with shadows disappear for days, lost in his art or his demons, leaving Eli to wonder if he was enough. Then came Marcus, the alpha who'd pulled Eli from a burning community center during a volunteer event gone wrong. Marcus was everything Caleb wasn't: grounded, warm, with calloused hands and a smile that promised safety. Their dates were simple hikes in the Cascades, coffee runs, quiet evenings watching old movies. Marcus made Eli feel seen, but his unwavering sense of duty sometimes felt like a wall. When Eli tried to get closer, Marcus would pull back, citing his demanding job or his fear of hurting someone he cared about. Julian was the wild card. Eli met him at a fundraising gala for a local LGBTQ+ shelter, where Julian's tailored suit and quick wit stole the room. Their fling was a whirlwind of rooftop bars and stolen kisses in Seattle's hidden corners. Julian's confidence was intoxicating, but his pasta-messy divorce and a family who disowned him for being openly bisexual made him guarded. Eli sensed Julian loved him, but trust was a bridge neither could fully cross. Now, as Eli sat in the cafe, the weight of his pregnancy test results pressed against him like the rain outside. He'd taken the test 3 days ago, staring at the double lines in his tiny apartment bathroom, heart pounding. Omegas could only conceive during their heat, and Eli's last heat had been a blur of passion with all 3 alphas each encounter raw, unguarded, and reckless. He hadn't planned for this, hadn't wanted to be the Omega caught in a cliché love triangle, let alone a triangle with 3 points. The door chimed, and Eli's breath caught. Caleb stood there, shaking rain from his leather jacket, his dark eyes scanning the room until they landed on Eli. The Omega's pulse raced as Caleb approached, his presence filling the space like a storm cloud. "You look like hell," Caleb said, sliding into the seat across from Eli. His voice was rough, but his gaze softened, betraying the concern he tried to hide. "I feel like it," Eli admitted, his fingers tightening around the mug. He wanted to blurt out the truth: "I am pregnant. And it might be yours," but the words stuck in his throat. Caleb leaned forward, his hand brushing Eli's, sending a jolt through him. "Talk to me," Caleb urged, his voice low. "You've been dodging my calls for days." Eli swallowed hard. I need time. There's something I have to figure out." Caleb's brow furrowed. But before he could press further, the cafe door opened again. Marcus. His broad shoulders filled the frame, his firefighter's jacket damp from the rain. He spotted Eli and Caleb, and his easy smile faltered. "Eli," Marcus said, his voice steady but laced with something unreadable. He nodded at Caleb, the tension between the two alphas crackling like static. Eli's heart sank. He hadn't meant for them to meet like this. Not now. Not when he was barely holding himself together. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, pulling up a chair. His hazel eyes, so like Eli's but warmer, searched the Omega's face. Eli felt exposed, as if Marcus could see the secret written across his skin. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. How could he tell them? How could he face the possibility that one of them or none of them would want this child? Want him? The cafe seemed to shrink, the air thick with unspoken questions. Eli's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his stomach lurching. A text from Julian, at the airport. "Back in town tonight. Can we talk?" Eli's vision blurred. All three alphas, converging on him like planets in a doomed orbit. He was pregnant, and the truth would either bind them or break them all. Eli stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need air," he muttered, brushing past Caleb and Marcus. He stumbled into the rain, the cold biting his skin, but it was better than the suffocating weight of their gazes. He walked, not knowing where, until he reached Pike Place Market, its neon signs glowing through the downpour. The scent of fresh flowers and salt water grounded him, but only just. He thought of the child growing inside him, a tiny life caught in the chaos of his heart. Eli had always believed in love's power to heal, to bridge divides, but now he wasn't sure. Could he face the alphas, each one a piece of his soul, and demand the truth? Could he raise a child alone if they turned away? The rain hid his tears as he whispered to himself, "I'm not ready for this, but I have to be." Back at the cafe, Caleb and Marcus sat in uneasy silence, the weight of Eli's distress lingering like a ghost. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, his voice low. "He's hiding something. I can feel it." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "Whatever it is, he's scared, and I'm not letting him face it alone." Eli didn't know it yet, but the alphas weren't ready to let him go either. Each carried their own wounds, their own hopes, but they shared one truth: Eli was their center, their Omega, and they'd fight to prove Idovan if it meant confronting each other. Julian's return to Seattle that night was like a match struck in a room full of dynamite. Eli met him at a rooftop bar overlooking the Puget Sound, the city skyline glittering against the inky water. Julian's tailored suit was as impeccable as ever, but his blue eyes held a storm of their own. "You've been avoiding me," he said, leaning against the railing, his voice smooth but edged with hurt. Eli gripped the cold metal railing, the wind tugging at his scarf. "It's not you," he said, his voice barely audible over the city's hum. "It's everything." He wanted to tell Julian about the pregnancy, about the other alphas, but the words felt like betrayal. Julian had been his escape, his spark of reckless joy, but now that joy was tangled in fear. Julian stepped closer, his hand brushing Eli's cheek. "You're shaking," he murmured. "Whatever it is, I'm here." But Eli pulled back, the weight of his secret too heavy to share in that moment. Julian's face tightened, but he didn't push. Instead, he offered a small smile. "When you're ready, I'll listen." The next week was a blur of avoidance and dread. Eli buried himself in work at the community center, helping kids with autism find their voice through music. It was his sanctuary, a place where he could forget the chaos of his personal life. But the alphas wouldn't let him hide. Caleb showed up at the center one afternoon, a canvas under his arm, a painting of Eli, eyes bright with hope, surrounded by swirling colors. "I painted this for you," Caleb said, his voice raw. "I know I'm a mess, but I'm trying." Eli's heart ached. He wanted to believe Caleb could be steady, could be a father, but the alpha's unpredictability loomed large. "It's beautiful," Eli said, touching the canvas. "But I need more than art right now." Marcus was next, inviting Eli for a hike in the Olympic National Forest. The trail was quiet, the air crisp with pine and earth. Marcus walked beside him, his presence solid, comforting. "I know something's wrong," he said as they reached a clearing, the mountains stretching endlessly before them. "You don't have to tell me yet, but I'm not going anywhere." Eli's throat tightened. Marcus was safety, but safety wasn't enough when Eli's heart was split 3 ways. "I'm scared," he admitted, his voice breaking. Marcus pulled him into a hug, his warmth grounding Eli even as his mind spun. "We'll figure it out," Marcus whispered. "Together." Julian, true to form, took a different approach. He invited Eli to a quiet dinner at his apartment, a sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the Space Needle. Over candlelit pasta, Julian opened up about his family's rejection, his struggle to rebuild. "I've lost a lot," he said, his eyes locked on Eli's. "But you're worth fighting for." Eli's resolve crumbled. He told Julian everything: the pregnancy, the 3 possible alphas, the fear that he'd lose them all. Julian listened, his face unreadable, then took Eli's hand. "I don't care who the father is," he said fiercely. "I care about you, and I'll be there, no matter what." But the truth wasn't that simple. Eli knew he couldn't keep running from the confrontation. He arranged a meeting at his apartment, a small space filled with secondhand furniture and music sheets. The alphas arrived one by one, the air thick with tension as Caleb, Marcus, and Julian faced each other for the first time. Eli stood in the center, his heart pounding, and spoke the words he'd been dreading. "I'm pregnant, and one of you is the father." The silence was deafening. Caleb's fists clenched, Marcus's jaw tightened, and Julian's eyes narrowed. "What?" Caleb finally said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're saying it could be any of us?" Eli nodded, tears burning his eyes. "It happened during my heat. I didn't plan this. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." The room erupted into chaos accusations. Raised voices. Each alpha grappling with the revelation. Caleb stormed out, slamming the door. Marcus stayed, his hand on Eli's shoulder. But his silence spoke volumes. Julian lingered longest, his gaze intense. "We need a paternity test," he said quietly. "But this doesn't change how I feel about you." The next days were a storm of emotions. Eli scheduled the test, a simple blood draw that felt like a guillotine. He spent sleepless nights wondering what the results would mean. Would the father step up? Would the others walk away? And what did he want for himself? For the child? Caleb returned, apologetic, with a sketchbook filled with drawings of Eli and a future they could share. Marcus brought meals to Eli's apartment, his quiet strength a lifeline. Julian sent texts, checking in, offering legal advice for co-parenting scenarios. Each alpha was trying, in their own way, to prove they could be enough. But Eli wasn't sure if he could choose her if he even wanted to. The day of the results arrived, and Eli sat in the clinic waiting room, his hands trembling. The alphas had agreed to meet him there, a fragile truce born of necessity. As the doctor called his name, Eli felt the weight of the moment. This was a truth that would shape their future. The clinic's sterile walls seemed to close in as Eli clutched the envelope with the paternity results. Caleb, Marcus, and Julian sat in a tense semicircle, their eyes fixed on him. The doctor had left them alone, the silence heavier than the rain outside. Eli's fingers shook as he opened the envelope, his breath catching as he read the name. "It's Marcus," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Marcus's eyes widened, a mix of shock and relief crossing his face. Caleb's shoulders slumped, and Julian's jaw tightened, but neither spoke. Eli's heart twisted. He'd braced for this moment, but it didn't make it easier. Marcus reached for Eli's hand, his touch steady. "I'm here," he said softly. "For you. For the baby. Whatever you need." But Eli saw the flicker of pain in Caleb's and Julian's eyes, and it broke him. He loved them all, in different ways, for different reasons. How could he let two of them go? "I need time," Eli said, his voice cracking. He left the clinic, the alphas trailing behind, each grappling with their own emotions. Back at his apartment, Eli curled up on his couch, the envelope crumpled in his hand. He thought of his child, of the life they'd have. He wanted a family, not a fractured one torn apart by jealousy or pride. The next morning, Caleb showed up at Eli's door, his eyes red-rimmed. "I'm not the father," he said, his voice raw. "But I don't care. I love you, Eli. I'll love that kid like it's mine if you'll let me." Eli's tears fell as he pulled Caleb into a hug, the alpha's warmth a balm to his aching heart. Julian came later, his usual confidence subdued. "I won't lie, it hurts," he admitted, sitting across from Eli. "But you're my home. If you'll have me, I'm in. All the way." Eli's chest tightened. Julian's words were a promise, one he hadn't expected but desperately needed. Marcus was the last to speak, inviting Eli to a quiet park near Lake Washington. They sat on a bench, the water lapping at the shore, and Marcus took Eli's hand. "I'm the father, and I'll do right by our kid," he said. "But I see how you look at them. Caleb, Julian, theory part of you too. I won't make you choose." Eli's breath hitched. "What are you saying?" I'm saying we can make this work, Marcus said, his voice steady but emotional. All of us. If you want it. If they want it. This kid deserves a family. And you deserve love, all of it. The idea was radical. Unconventional. But it sparked something in Eli. A family. Not bound by tradition, but by choice. He invited Caleb and Julian to the park. And under the shade of a cedar tree, he laid out Marcus's vision. I love you all, Eli said, his voice trembling but firm. I don't want to lose any of you. Can we try this? For the baby. For us. The alphas exchanged looks, wary. Uncertain. But not hostile. Caleb spoke first. His voice soft. I'm not good at sharing. But for you. I'll try. Julian nodded. A small smile breaking through. I'm in. Let's figure it out. Marcus squeezed Eli's hand. His eyes warm. We've got this. The months that followed were messy, beautiful, and real. The alphas moved into a shared house in Capitol Hill. A fixer-upper they poured their hearts into. Caleb painted a mural in the nursery. Waves and stars for the baby. Julian handled legal paperwork, ensuring their unconventional family was protected. Marcus built a crib with his own hands, his quiet strength anchoring them all. Eli's pregnancy wasn't easy morning sickness, sleepless nights, and the weight of societal judgment. But the alphas were there, each in their own way. Caleb sang lullabies to Eli's belly, his voice rough but tender. Julian read parenting books, debating names over breakfast. Marcus held Eli through the worst days, his presence a reminder that they were in this together. When the baby, a girl named Luna, arrived, the delivery room was crowded with 3 alphas, each holding their breath as Eli brought her into the world. She had Marcus's hazel eyes, but her smile, her spirit, felt like a piece of them all. As Eli held her, surrounded by the men he loved, he realized this was the family he'd always dreamed of, not perfect, but theirs. Seattle's rain still fell, but it no longer felt like a storm. It was a rhythm, a backdrop to their unconventional love. They faced whispers and stares, but they also found allies, friends, neighbors, a community that saw their bond and celebrated it. Eli knew there'd be challenges ahead, but with Caleb's passion, Marcus's strength, and Julian's heart, they'd face them together. Luna grew, her laughter filling the house, and Eli watched her with wonder. He'd been afraid of the truth, afraid of losing love, but instead, he'd found more than he'd ever imagined. In a world that tried to define them, they'd written their own story, one of courage, love, and a family that defied all odds.